All right, let's talk about this piece of shit right here. Ghostbusters 2016. This is a movie that I have literally put off talking about for years. I made my reasons why I was not going to watch this movie clear in past videos from a long time ago, but if you want a very quick summation, it's because none of the original creative team were involved with this. Harold Ramis, Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, and of course, the originals were written by Harold Ramis and Dan Aykroyd. They're not involved with this. Yes, they make cameos. I think that those may have actually been contractually obligated. I've seen some evidence to that fact. I don't know if it's true or not, just some leaked documents from Sony Pictures that they were using their legal team to force guys like Bill Murray to be in the movie, at least on a cameo level. But none of them were involved in it. That's why I didn't want to see it. So why am I talking about it all this time later? Well, after it's been relevant. It's not relevant for me to talk about it anymore, really. Probably nobody watching this who's a longtime subscriber really cares what I think about this movie at this point. So I want to talk about it because I think there's a lot to learn via Negativa. It's easy to learn what not to do because what not to do can be more specific than what you ought to do. And this movie is actually a great example of massive failures. So what makes the movie bad? Well, it's not the production. The production values overall are okay. The editing is fine. The action sequences are, for the most part, fine. The special effects are fine. The sets look good. Other than some of the music selections, particularly the Lenny Kravitz version of the Ghostbusters song, which was like, I don't know, razor blades in my eardrum. It was extremely annoying. Other than that, the production was good, right? The actors and actresses in it, they're not bad. The actresses are not doing a bad job. I think they've been given something really bad, and that was a script that really, really, really left a lot to be desired. And it's odd that you can spend over $100 million on a movie, and literally the cheapest part of production is the writing phase. It's writing a script. So how could you not spend a couple of grand to buy a good script or hire a good script writer to write a good script and then spend over $100 million producing a movie that at its core is just, there's nothing there? That's really the big problem. It all comes back to the writing. You can throw as much money as you want at the wall, but if you don't have any kind of story for people to like beneath all of that production value, it's usually going to fail. Not always, but it's usually going to be a failure, and this is a good example. So what makes the writing bad? I'd like to explain my opinion on that. So the first thing is that the entire movie feels like a giant cash grab. From the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie, it's full of little winks at the audience, little references to the previous movie. This is not a movie that stands on its own in any way. It is heavily reliant on the previous movie for a lot of its attempted laughs. It's reliant on the previous movie for its aesthetics, even for its story. The story is essentially a ripoff of the first two movies. It's just the format of the first two movies copied again. Someone's trying to bring in ghosts to create an apocalyptic ghost event, and the Ghostbusters have to stop it, and the government is opposed to them. Those are all the essential themes from the previous two movies, so there's nothing original about it. Everything you see is just hearkening back to the movies that you actually liked. And probably what they saw, rather than a chance to make a good story, was a chance to grab a lot of cash, and it feels like that. Even the cameos by the original actors like Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray, they feel like, especially if you watch Bill Murray in this movie, you can see on his face he wants nothing to do with this movie, and he probably had some contract to fulfill. I've seen some documents to that effect. I don't know if they're true or not, but it definitely shows up on his face. And in fact, the main actresses, Kirsten Wiig and all the others, they just feel like they don't really know what they're doing in the movie and why they're there. Like it's a paycheck for them. And they're not bad, but they don't have anything to act on. They're acting out a part that the director, Paul Feig, is putting on them, but they're really not doing anything else to it. So the entire thing feels like a cash grab, and you can see that in every little detail that's there. It doesn't feel like something that is a vehicle for a good story. It feels like something that's trying to part your wallet from you. Now, I will say, luckily, I didn't spend any money watching this movie, which was my original objective, was to not give them any money. This movie magically appeared in my list of movies that I own like through my Amazon catalog, I guess because I owned some account, opened some account for some digital library. They just gave the movie away. That's how bad it is. So I didn't part with any of my money to watch this particular movie, and that makes me feel good. Second big reason, it's not funny. And it's not funny in a way that's extremely painful to watch. When you watch somebody, if you've ever seen a comedian go on stage and just bomb, just tell a bunch of bad jokes that no one's connecting with, it's that feeling when you're watching it, even though this is not a live event and you don't have that audience feedback. Because when a comedian bombs on stage, the audience starts to feel bad and they can't laugh. And so it gets harder and harder to make the audience laugh the more and more you whiff jokes. And that's what the whole movie felt like to me. There's like a pathos. It's a pathetic experience watching these women flop about in front of the camera trying to be funny and just really missing it. And I think it all comes back to the writing. Now, I will say some of the scenes seem like they're ad-libbed. They seem improvised. Some of the moments of attempted comedy. And if that's the case, and I don't know if it is the case or not because I don't know too much about the production process of this movie, if that's the case, it says a lot about how much they actually cared about the writing. They didn't think to write situational comedy ahead of time. They just inserted scenes. Like there's a scene between Leslie Jones and McCarthy where they're riffing on how white Kirsten Wiig's character is, and it's really not funny. And they're jokes that might have been almost funny like in 1990, but in 2016 it's painful to watch them do that. And it felt ad-libbed, and not in a good way. There's an idea that like comedy happens in the moment, and it does to a certain extent, but improvising and then putting it on the silver screen, not always your best plan. And that's what it felt like for lots of the moments. And in fact, the comedic moments are separated out from the story. So the story happens, and then they have these like kind of slapsticky, bumbling, awkward comedy moments that all of them seem to miss. I don't think I laughed. I almost laughed one time maybe. So it's like on the level of an Adam Sandler movie in terms of not being funny. There's an anti-funniness to it that's really makes it awkward. Like you want to turn it off out of embarrassment for the poor actresses on screen having to try to act out the terrible script. It's just one of the worst examples of attempted comedy. And the thing is, every single scene they're trying to be funny. And when you're trying to be funny and it's not, it's way worse than trying to play it straight and having some funny moments. So if you're playing the movie straight and there's some funny moments, those tend to come off a lot better than if you're trying to be funny with serious moments in between. Just one of the things that I noticed about this particular movie is that. So it makes it really hard to watch it. Number 3 is just the, in general, terrible writing. Beyond the fact that the comedy doesn't stick, the entire construction of the plot from beginning to end is done really poorly. You have essentially a copy-paste plot from one of the first 2 movies. You have an evil character who's trying to bring about a ghost apocalypse for reasons that don't make any sense and are never really explored, other than I guess he's kind of awkward or was maybe bullied at school, which I guess makes a little bit of sense, but they didn't get deep enough into that for you to really know what the villain is trying to do. The main story really should be about the main characters forming the business of Ghostbusters and struggling to make it. And that's what the very first Ghostbusters movie was about. The apocalypse plot taking center stage and the opposition with the government really was from the second movie. So this is like a copy-paste of Ghostbusters 2, not Ghostbusters 1, and people tended to like Ghostbusters 1 better. But at the same time, you're trying to create all this front-loaded exposition where you're creating the Ghostbusters business. And a lot of that feels awkward and really poorly thought out. So you have one character played by Kirsten Wiig that's a professor, and she gets fired because she wrote a book about ghosts at some point, which actually doesn't make any sense if you know anything about the university system. And the university she teaches at, which is, I think, Columbia, is presented as this extremely stuffy institution, which is also not true. But anyway, she somehow gets fired from a professorship job, even though it's almost impossible to fire tenured professors even at private universities. And so she kind of falls into this business with Melissa McCarthy's character, who also gets fired from a community college job. And the firing scene is one of the most awkward and unfunny things I've seen. They have a character who's a dean of a college telling the characters to suck it. And the absurdness of that could be funny if it was executed right. But once again, the problem is in execution. And it just comes off as being extremely out of place and inappropriate for the setup that they're trying to get. So essentially, you have all these characters lose their jobs and then start the business. They have no motivation on their own to start the business. They fall into starting the business. They're like, well, we're all fired. I guess we'll start a business, which is really, really different from how things went with the first movie. And so that is happening at the same time you're trying to create a mystery plot about this guy trying to start a ghost apocalypse. But you know right away he's trying to start a ghost apocalypse. They take another almost 2 hours to get to the point where the characters figure out what you figured out from one of the very first scenes in the movie, which is a little bit annoying to watch when you're in the audience, where it's like, how has nobody figured this out yet? Why is the plot not moving? You create a conflict and then you don't really attend to it for several hours while you try to develop characters. So the setting for it just doesn't really work. The characters don't really work either because of their origins are not super thought out. You have Leslie Jones, who's just being a stereotypical angry black woman. And I don't know, that wasn't what I got. I didn't get a stereotypical black man from the original Ghostbusters. So I don't know why they chose to do that, other than, again, they're trying to be funny and they think that people think that, acting like a stereotypical ghetto black person is funny. And it might be funny to some people. It's not very funny to me as an adult. And, as a person who's wise with the world, I guess it just seems a little sad to do it. It's like watching someone at a minstrel show almost. It just feels like offensive and weird, and not very good. The plot, like I said, it's kind of a mess. So the setting, the character's plot, that triangle that makes up a good story, it's all a mess there. And these are the 3 big reasons. It feels like a cash grab, it's not funny, and there's terrible writing. There's additional reasons that have to do with execution. The actors that they stuck in the roles, other than the primary roles are actually okay. Even though Leslie Jones is just acting this stereotypical black character, she's not terrible in what she does with it. She's not a bad actress for what she was told to do, and none of them are really, but they packed this movie full of quote comedic actors like Michael McDonald, and there's a whole bunch. And that says to me that they were trying really hard to make a comedy, that they just brought in comedic actors hoping that those comedic actors could somehow create timing out of the mess of a script that was there. But when you watch somebody try to create good timing out of a script that has bad timing, and yes, timing exists in the script. The way that lines are spoken, it totally exists in the script. Go and look at a teleplay, go look at a transcript of a 30 Rock episode, and that's a TV show that has very good comedic timing from the script level. And you can look at that and you can see the comedic timing. It's what's called a joke factory, or what ends up being called a joke factory. They throw a lot of jokes at you, and they're timed in such a way that some of them will land, some of them won't, but when they land, you'll be laughing, and it generally works. So in this case, it's like they tried to just throw a bunch of different jokes out, but none of them landed. So the comedic timing wouldn't have made a difference because the script was full of unfunny jokes. But in general, a lot of the actors don't feel up to the task of what they're doing. They feel like they belong on a skit comedy. They feel like they belong on Saturday Night Live or Mad TV. They don't feel like they belong in a movie. And that I think that's the fault of the director and the casting director wanting to make a funny movie by putting funny actors in it. And that's not the way that you make comedy. You make comedy by writing good jokes. And then you hire somebody who has good timing, and you hire a director who knows what good timing looks like, and you have to put all those things together to make comedy happen. Comedy is actually very difficult. Comedy is extremely difficult to execute correctly because you have to have good words, you have to have good timing, you have to have a good actor that's able to execute it, and you have to have somebody who knows how to edit things and knows how to get a performance out of an actor to make a comedic moment happen. A movie like Monty Python and the Holy Grail is a great movie simply because it's funny. And you don't need anything else to work in the movie. The plot's a mess. None of that makes sense. In fact, it would be less funny if it made sense because it's about the jokes. But lesser men than the Monty Python crew could not have made that movie because they would have lacked the wit to write the jokes, and they would have lacked the experience to manage the timing and the acting portion of it. So that's Ghostbusters 2016. The failure is in the writing, and from that, everything else springs forth. Now, it's not a movie that hammers you over the head with like some kind of feminist girl power message. That's not really there. That might have been a motivator for when they were creating the movie. Who knows? That's not really there. It's just another standard Ghostbusters plot. It's about, someone trying to start an independent business and the government wants to keep him down. In fact, it has more of an anti-government message than it has any kind of like Marxist or social Marxist message, which surprised me. I thought that they would get rid of that particular element. But so that's not what makes it bad. That's not the reason that it comes off as bad. It comes off as bad because the writing is bad, and all the other stuff that might have contributed to the existence of the movie, whatever motivations that the people that were involved with making it had, those matter less than just the simple fact that it was a bad script and they threw $100 million at it, and what came out was a terrible cash grab of a failed comedy. So thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I will see you all next time, and please leave me your thoughts on this particular movie down below. I'm very interested. I guess 2 years after the fact, I'm sure some of you have seen the movie. If not, maybe you have it for free on Amazon Prime in like your video library, and you want to learn a little bit via Negativa about what kind of jokes don't work, and what kind of things might work. I also didn't mention Chris Hemsworth's character. Boy, what a miss that was. It's like, we're gonna have a pretty boy and have him act stupid. So anytime you watch Chris Hemsworth like on screen, you get the idea that he's too competent to be in the scene. It's just an awful choice in casting. Everything about the decision prior to the first frame being shot seems to have been wrong. All the instincts were wrong with this movie. So anyway, that's my feeling about it. I'll see you guys next time. Have a great day.